My family thinks I cursed my baby with a weird name. Now they're pushing me to change it, but I'm standing my ground. So, I, 29F, recently gave birth to my first child, a beautiful baby girl. My husband, 31M, and I spent months deliberating over the perfect name for her. We're both into mythology and literature, and we wanted a name that felt unique but also meaningful. After a lot of back and forth, we settled on Nyxerin, pronounced Nyxerin. It's a combination of Nyx, the Greek goddess of the night, and Irina, which means peace in Greek. We thought it sounded poetic, strong, and unique. I shared the name with my family a few weeks before she was born, and the reactions were mixed. Some of them thought it was cool and different, but others were clearly taken aback. My mom said it was a mouthful, and my sister-in-law, 34F, was silent for a while before saying, "Well, it's interesting." The real drama started at a family dinner after the baby was born. My aunt, 62F, who was never shy about her opinions, asked me what we ended up naming our daughter. When I told her, she immediately burst into laughter like a full-on cackle. I was taken aback and asked what was so funny, and she said, "You seriously named your kid that? Poor child. You've practically cursed her with that name." I tried to keep my cool and asked what she meant, and she went on a rant about how Nyxerin is a made-up, weird name that would just make my daughter's life harder. She said that she would be bullied in school, that no one would ever spell it right, and that we were trying too hard to be unique. She even went so far as to call me selfish for giving her a name like that, and said I was setting her up for a life of frustration. I snapped back, saying that it's our baby and our choice of name, and that she should respect it. She then accused me of being sensitive and said I wouldn't last in the real world if I couldn't handle a little feedback. The whole dinner turned awkward, and my husband and I ended up leaving early. Now I'm starting to second-guess myself. My mom said my aunt was out of line, but also added that people do have a point, and suggested that we might want to consider a more normal name. My husband says we shouldn't change anything just because a few people don't like it, but the whole thing has left me feeling conflicted. So 80 for naming my baby Nyxerin and for getting upset when my aunt called me out on it? Update 1. So, after the dinner explosion with my aunt and all the unsolicited opinions about Nyxerin's name, things were tense, to say the least. My husband and I decided to lay low for a bit and keep some distance from family events. It wasn't really about avoiding them forever, but more about needing time to regroup. Honestly, I was exhausted after giving birth and dealing with a newborn, and the last thing I needed was more family drama. I thought that by stepping back for a while, people would cool down and, I don't know, maybe realize that they overstepped. That was the hope, at least. But of course, things never really go the way you plan. A couple of weeks after that dinner, my mom calls me up and asks if I'm planning on going to my cousin's baby shower. Now, I love my cousin, 28F, and we've always been close. She was actually one of the few people who didn't have a strong opinion about Nyxerin's name, so I figured she wouldn't mind if I skipped out, especially with all the baby-related chaos in my life. But my mom sounded weirdly insistent, saying how it would look bad if I didn't show up and how people might think I'm holding a grudge against the family. I hadn't even said anything about that. Like, I'm not mad at everyone, just the ones who acted like I committed a crime by giving my daughter a unique name. Still, I didn't want to make things worse, so I agreed to go, even though the idea of dealing with my aunt again made me feel like throwing up. My husband couldn't make it because of work, so it was just me and the baby, which added a whole new layer of stress. I knew my aunt would be there, along with other family members who probably had opinions they hadn't shared yet, and I wasn't exactly in the mood to defend myself all over again. The day of the baby shower arrives, and I'm a ball of nerves. I get Nyxerin dressed up in the cutest little outfit, hoping it'll distract from any potential comments about her name. We walk in, and almost immediately I can feel eyes on us. Like, not in a nice, oh, what a cute baby way, but more like, there's the girl with the weirdly named kid. My cousin greets me with a hug, and for a minute, I think everything's going to be fine. She asks me how I've been and how Nyxerin is doing, and I start to relax. Then it happens. We're sitting down, and my aunt, the same one who laughed at the name during the dinner, walks over to me with this look on her face like she's got something to say. I can already feel my heart rate go up, but I try to keep it cool. She looks at Nyxerin, smiles in this way that's clearly not genuine, and says, So, have you started calling her something else yet? Something easier? I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like a slap in the face, especially after everything that went down at the dinner. I thought we were past this, or at least that she'd drop it for the sake of family peace. But nope. Here she was, doubling down on her weird obsession with my daughter's name. I didn't even know how to respond at first. I just kind of stared at her, my mind going blank. But before I could come up with anything, my cousin, bless her heart, jumps in and says, "Aunt name. I think Nexarin is a beautiful name. I love how unique it is." My aunt just raises her eyebrows and shrugs, like my cousin's opinion didn't matter at all. She then turns to me and says, "Well, you might think it's cute now, but just wait until she's in school. You'll see." Now, I'm not proud of what happened next, but I couldn't hold back anymore. I was tired, emotional, and just done with her constant comments. I looked her dead in the eye and said, if I was going to worry about what everyone thought of my life choices, I wouldn't have made it this far. Maybe it's time you stop worrying about what I name my child and start worrying about your own issues." Yikes. The room went dead silent. My aunt's face turned bright red, and for a split second, I thought she was going to explode. But instead, she just muttered something under her breath and walked away. I'm pretty sure the whole room heard what I said, and while no one else said anything out loud, I could feel the tension in the air. I quickly excused myself and went to a different part of the house to calm down, because honestly, I felt like I was about to cry. After a few minutes, my mom came to find me. She looked a little uncomfortable, but I could tell she wasn't mad. She said something like, "I know your aunt can be difficult, but you might want to consider apologizing just to keep the peace. You don't have to change Nixarin's name, but maybe it's not worth all this drama." That's when I kind of snapped again. I told her that I wasn't going to apologize for standing up for my daughter, and that I was tired of everyone acting like I did something wrong by giving her a unique name. I reminded her that I didn't make a scene at the dinner even though my aunt had laughed at me, but enough was enough. I told her that if anyone else had something to say about my baby's name, they could keep it to themselves because I wasn't going to change it or apologize for it. My mom didn't push it after that. She just nodded and gave me a hug, saying she understood where I was coming from. But I could tell she still thought I should smooth things over with my aunt. I ended up leaving the baby shower early, partly because I didn't want to deal with any more comments and partly because I just didn't have the energy for small talk after that confrontation. On the way home, I started thinking about how this whole name situation had gotten so out of hand. I never imagined that something as simple as choosing a name for my daughter would cause so much drama. I mean, it's not like I named her something offensive or hard to pronounce, at least in my opinion. It's unique, sure, but that was the point. We wanted something that reflected our love for mythology and literature, and Nixarin felt perfect to us. Now I'm at a crossroads. Part of me feels like I need to keep standing my ground because this is my daughter, and I shouldn't have to justify my choices to anyone. But another part of me is starting to wonder if this is going to be a lifelong battle. Will people always have something to say about her name? Will Nixarin grow up hating it because of all the negativity surrounding it? At the end of the day, I don't regret naming her Nixarin, but I'm realizing that maybe I wasn't prepared for how judgmental people can be. I guess I'll just have to see how things play out, but one thing's for sure, I'm not backing down. Update 2. Things took a strange turn after the baby shower. I thought the confrontation with my aunt would at least be the end of the direct drama, but I should have known better. It's my family after all, and things rarely stay quiet for long. What I didn't expect was for the name situation to go beyond just family. It somehow spilled out into my husband's side of things, and now it's become an even bigger deal than I ever imagined. Here's what happened. A few days after the shower, I started noticing some weird passive-aggressive comments on social media. Not from my family, they weren't that bold, at least not yet, but from a few friends and distant relatives of my husband. At first, it was just vague posts about unique baby names, followed by a bunch of eye-rolling emojis. Nothing too direct. But then, one of my husband's cousins, 29, posted this long rant about how people these days are giving their kids pretentious, made-up names, that sound like they belong in a fantasy novel. He didn't name us specifically, but it was extremely obvious who he was talking about because, of course, he ended the post with something like, "We get it? You're so unique." I was livid. I hadn't even spoken to this cousin about Nixeren's name, so I have no idea how he got involved. My husband tried to brush it off at first, saying that this cousin is known for being a bit of a troll, and I should just ignore it. But I couldn't. I mean, it's one thing for family to have opinions behind closed doors, but to see people dragging our daughter's name online? It was infuriating. So I did what any sleep-deprived, slightly unhinged new mom would do. I sent him a private message. I kept it civil, at first. I told him that I saw his post and that while he's entitled to his opinion, it was hurtful to see him make fun of something that means a lot to us. I explained the significance of the name again, just like I had to my family, hoping that maybe if he understood the reasoning behind it, he'd back off. Well, that didn't happen. His response was nothing short of condescending. He basically told me that I was taking things too personally and that he wasn't going to censor himself just because I didn't like hearing the truth. Then he added something like, "You have to admit, though, it's a little ridiculous. People are going to talk. Get used to it." I didn't even bother replying. I was so angry I couldn't think straight. But when I told my husband what happened, he finally agreed that this had gone too far. He decided to talk to his cousin himself, hoping that a direct conversation would put an end to it. So my husband calls him up, and at first it sounds like things are going okay. He tells him that the post was out of line, that it hurt my feelings, and that it was unnecessary to turn something as personal as our daughter's name into a public joke. But then the cousin says something that makes my blood boil. Apparently, he told my husband that I needed to chill and that I was being overly sensitive because I'm still hormonal from having a baby. Hormonal? Like I'm some irrational mess who can't handle criticism because of my postpartum emotions. When my husband told me that, I lost it. I mean, how dare he reduce everything I'm feeling to being hormonal? This isn't about hormones. It's about respect. It's about the fact that people feel entitled to mock a child's name just because it's different. I told my husband that I didn't care if his cousin never apologized, but I wasn't going to engage with him anymore. If he wants to act like a jerk, that's on him. Unfortunately, that wasn't the end of it. A few days later, my mother-in-law, 63F, called my husband to check in. She hadn't said much about Nixeren's name before, at least not directly to us, so I wasn't sure what to expect. But the call took a turn when she started asking if we'd thought about the long-term consequences of naming our daughter something so unusual. She was trying to frame it like she was just being concerned, but it was clear that she was siding with the cousin, even if she wasn't as blunt about it. She mentioned how kids can be cruel, and how having a name like Nixeren might make her stand out in a way that could lead to teasing. She also said that it might be easier for everyone if we gave her a more traditional middle name that she could use later in life, just in case. My husband shut it down pretty quickly, telling her that we weren't changing anything and that we'd made our decision as parents. But after he hung up, I could tell that the conversation had gotten to him. He didn't say anything right away, but later that night, he brought up the idea of giving Nixeren a nickname, something simpler that we could use around family to avoid all this drama. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. After everything, he was the one who'd been defending the name, telling me that we shouldn't change a thing. And now, suddenly, he was entertaining the idea of giving in, all because a few people had made it difficult for us. I get that he's just trying to make peace, but it felt like a betrayal. We talked, or more accurately, argued, about it for hours. I told him that I didn't want to cave to the pressure, that giving her a nickname felt like admitting that her real name was somehow wrong. He said that it wasn't about giving up, but about making life easier for us and for her in the future. He kept saying, "What if she hates her name? What if she really does get bullied for it?" And that's when I realized what this was really about. It wasn't just the family's opinions that were getting to him. It was fear. Fear that maybe they were right, that we'd given our daughter a name that would make her life harder, and that we'd be responsible for that. I wish I could say that we reached some grand resolution, but we didn't. We ended the conversation with both of us feeling frustrated and unsure of what to do. I don't want to back down, but I also don't want to cause more strain in our relationship. At the same time, I feel like I've been fighting an uphill battle from the moment I named my daughter, and I'm not sure how much more of this I can take. In the days that followed, I tried to focus on other things, taking care of Nixerin, getting back into a routine, but the whole situation was weighing on me. I kept replaying my mother-in-law's words, my aunt's laughter, and even my husband's concerns. Was I being stubborn for the sake of being stubborn? Or was I right to stand my ground? And then, there's the nagging thought that I've had since the beginning. What if Nixerin grows up and hates her name? What if she resents us for it? I can't shake the worry that maybe, just maybe, everyone else is right. But for now, I'm holding firm. I love my daughter's name, and I refuse to let other people's negativity ruin something that was supposed to be special. Maybe we'll use a nickname sometimes, but only because we want to, not because we're pressured into it. We're the parents, after all. It's our choice, and we're the ones who have to live with it. Let's just hope that, in time, the rest of the family will learn to live with it too.